Welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, I give my 5 best and 5 worst takes from the 2021 CFL season from all of my videos. Everything is fair game. But really quickly before we get started, if you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting the like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I greatly appreciate all the support, guys. And with that said, let's get on with the video. So for most of these takes, they're going to come right from my roster review series where I predicted awards for each team, and also my regular season predictions video, which if you go back and watch it now, it's pretty bad. But that is where most of these takes come from. Also my regular season weekly picks. There's some that come from that as well. So without further ado, let's get on with the countdown. So we're going to count it down worst, best, worst, best. So starting at number 5, worst prediction, and that is to pick the Toronto Argonauts to finish 6-8 during the regular season. They ended up finishing 9-5, and things just came together with Toronto a lot faster than I envisioned. I still had this team as a playoff team, as the second or third place team in the East, and winning a playoff game. They actually ended up finishing in the playoffs right where I thought they would. But ultimately, they came together much better in terms of the regular season. I was really undervaluing McLeod Bethel-Thompson coming into the year. I thought 2019, a lot of garbage time stats. And even though he did regress down the stretch here in 2021, he did have a very good season the first half of the year and clearly was the best quarterback the Argos had on the roster at the beginning of the season between him and Nick Arbuckle. So, Toronto in a lot of ways proved me wrong this season, and that's why it ranks at number 5. Now my number 5 best prediction, and that is the fact that there was no crossover in the league this season. I was just big on to this in the offseason, just saying that because it was a division-heavy schedule, it was much more likely that we were going to get 3 teams from the East making the playoffs and 3 teams from the West, instead of the 4 for the West and 2 for the East that we usually see. I think this is the first time we didn't get a crossover since 2016 or 2015. Not completely sure on the year, but it's been quite a while since we've had a non-crossover season in the CFL, and we ended up getting it this year with Montreal, Hamilton, Toronto. The ranking of the teams in the East, I didn't get completely correct, but the teams that made the playoffs, 3 East teams and 3 West teams, I got correct. So very happy with that. One of my better predictions this year. Now my number 4 worst prediction, and that is picking MAYALA, wide receiver for the Calgary Stampeders, to win the CFL's Most Outstanding Canadian Award. And I really jumped the gun on this one because at the end of his 2019 rookie season, MAYALA looked like he was becoming a star, had a handful of touchdowns, showed great chemistry with Bo Levi Mitchell, and I thought he was really going to carry it over into this 2021 season. And it was a total flop for him, honestly. He couldn't get anything going. I don't think he had a single 100-yard game this year. He didn't even score a single touchdown this year, I believe. And he just didn't create any explosive plays that we saw in 2019. He did have his fair share of catches. And, the end of the year stats don't look too bad for a 4th or 5th receiver on a team. But ultimately, just not Most Outstanding Canadian Award material, not even close. And ultimately, he was definitely not even one of the top 5 Canadians on Calgary's roster this year. So, very disappointing pick for me, one of my worst predictions of the year. Now, on the other hand, my number 4 best prediction was my predictions for the Ottawa REDBLACKS roster going into this season. In my roster review series, I ranked every position group in the CFL on every team, where they ranked relative to the rest of the league. And for the Ottawa REDBLACKS, especially on offense, I really criticized them and just their lack of talent going into this season. And a lot of this panned out. I had them ranked as the 8th best quarterback. Matt Nichols really struggled throughout the season. Everybody that played that position really struggled this year. I think they were probably easily the worst quarterback situation in the league this year. The running back position, I had ranked 9th. Similar story there. But I think what I really nailed was the offensive line, which was dead last in my rankings. And that really proved true throughout the season. I think they easily allowed the most sacks in the CFL this season. So I think I was pretty spot on about the REDBLACKS this year. I actually predicted them to go 4-10. They went 3-11. So, pretty close there as well. So, pretty happy with my predictions for the REDBLACKS this year. Now moving on to my number 3 worst prediction, and that was to take the Saskatchewan Roughriders to miss the playoffs. This was a knee-jerk reaction to me before the season started when they suffered all those Achilles injuries. I thought that was really going to hurt their defense. But honestly, throughout the season, the Saskatchewan Roughriders defense surprised me time and time again. Really came together as a unit, really well-coached unit. And the veterans that they still had in place healthy. I mean, they were really able to overcome the loss of Charleston Hughes in free agency. AC Leonard had a great year. Just a lot of guys stepping up on that defense. And honestly, the defense was the better side of the ball for Saskatchewan. They just found a way to keep winning games despite offense not, playing up to their potential a lot of the weeks of this season. So Saskatchewan, I was really wrong about. They ended up being like the second or third best team in the league all season long. Really close to beating Winnipeg in the playoffs. Arguably should have. So I was wrong about Saskatchewan this season, and picking them to miss the playoffs was totally wrong on my part. Now, on the other hand, my number 3 best prediction was taking the BC Lions to finish 5-9 this season. Ultimately, I feel like I got a lot of things right in terms of my roster review about the BC Lions and also about my preseason predictions for the record. Finishing 5-9, that's exactly where they finished. I thought going into this season they had a very talented skill group, and they flashed that throughout this season. Lucky Whitehead, Brian Burnham really stepping up this year. I mean, those guys just really talented players. Michael Riley had his moments this year. I mean, he still looked like an elite quarterback at times this season, but ultimately their undoing was their poor play along both lines on the line of scrimmage. The defensive line, bringing in a lot of rookies, really didn't pan out for them. Got pushed around in the running game a lot. And then the offensive line really continued their struggles from 2019. So I felt very good about how I predicted the BC Lions this season. I think it's the team I got the best predictions about this year. Now we're getting into some really bad predictions on my part. At number 2, worst prediction of the 2021 CFL season for me was ranking Zach Collaros as the 7th best starting quarterback in the CFL going into this season. And largely this was a health concern for me. Zach Collaros had really not put together a healthy full CFL season in a long time, maybe ever in his career up until this year. But he really did this season, obviously winning the Most Outstanding Player award. I just bet on the sample size not, coming out in terms of how he showed at the end of the 2019 season. But he clearly translated all of that. Winnipeg really just took all that momentum at the end of that season and really just continued it this year. Only really one legitimate loss the entire season. So Winnipeg, I was, pretty wrong about. I did have them finishing first in the regular season, but losing in the playoffs. We'll talk about that more in a second. But honestly, Zach Collaros was one of the things I was most wrong about this season. Much deserved MOP award, and if I had to do a ranking again, I would probably have him as the best quarterback in the CFL right now. Now, my number 2 best prediction was my regular season picks in general. These are my weekly game picks, obviously not like the preseason predictions where I ranked like all of the records of the teams this year, but these were my week-to-week predictions where I just predicted who was going to win every game. And honestly, I finished 40-23 on the year. Honestly, I had a really bad last week of the season. I think it went 1-3, 1-4. I think there were 5 games last week of the season. But ultimately, that really what dragged me down ultimately. But even at the end of the day, I mean, when I look at other people that are playing CFL Pick'em, people that were on CFL.ca, the experts, I thought I finished pretty well in comparison to a lot of those guys. And some of my highlights, some of my best picks of the season was taking Toronto to beat Winnipeg really early in the season. That was one of the better picks because that was really the only legitimate game Winnipeg lost when they were playing all their guys this year. So happy that Toronto was able to come out and provide me with a big victory there. And then another one was Saskatchewan losing to Calgary. I picked Calgary to beat Saskatchewan when Calgary, I think, was 2-5 at the time. They desperately needed to win. Backs against the wall, and Saskatchewan had a significantly better record at the time. But I took Calgary with the upset. They got it done. So, I mean, happy to, do well on the picks this season. And honestly, one of my better aspects of my takes on YouTube this year. All right, now it's time for the really bad pick. And I really couldn't do anything or pick anything else for this. And, it's just a bunch of picks, honestly, just rolled into one here because I couldn't really separate all these takes. And that was all of my Edmonton Elks related predictions this year. And, man, why do I start, honestly? I took Trevor Harris to win MOP. Obviously, that did not pan out. Had a very poor season, really from the get-go. Never got going this year. Had one really good game on Labor Day against Calgary. But, honestly, the Elks just could never get it going this year. Trevor Harris ultimately ends up getting traded to Montreal halfway through the year. I mean, that just speaks for itself and how failed of a prediction that was. And then I took Edmonton also to win the Grey Cup this year, and I was very high on this Elks team going into the year. I thought that a lot of talent, a lot of proven CFL talent on paper. I thought they had good Canadian talent, but a lot of these aspects of this team underperformed this year. A lot of veterans underperforming. Quarterback position obviously did not perform up to expectations, and that was a primary reason why they struggled as well. But there was just an overall just disappointing performance from this team this year, and these were my worst predictions of this season. I really thought this team. I ranked a lot of these positions high in my roster review series. So I mean, just disappointment all around from the Edmonton Elks, and I mean, a disappointment for me because I predicted them to perform so well in a lot of my predictions this year. Now, finishing off on a high note, and my number one best prediction this year, actually kind of two predictions rolled into one here, were my predictions for most outstanding defensive player, where I took Adam Bighill of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, nailed that, and then also took the two nominees for the most outstanding offensive lineman award in Brandon Revenberg and Stanley Bryant, with Stanley Bryant winning it. I got that right as well. I mean, really happy to see those award predictions pan out for me. But for Adam Bighill, I just thought that, I thought he was, going to be having a bounce back year this year. He was going to be on a great defense. He was going to be in a good position to win that award. And, because he's won it twice before, he has that name recognition. And a third really just solidifies your, greatness as a all-time CFL linebacker here if you're Adam Bighill, and that's exactly what happened. And then, Stanley Bryant, I mean, he's just the most consistent offensive lineman in the entire league, and then Revenberg, probably the best guard in the league. I mean, just felt very confident at the time, and obviously that's what happened with offensive lineman awards. A lot of the time it is prestige, but those two guys really are the top of their profession in this league, and ultimately those are some of my better picks from this season. But that is just the list I came up with today for the best and worst predictions that I had this season. Be sure to let me know in the comment section if I missed anything. And thanks for joining me all season, guys. Really excited to get going with off-season content in the next few days, looking at everybody's off-season, the teams, and what they need, what their biggest questions are. And I think that's going to be my next video, the biggest question for every team this offseason. So stay tuned for that this week. And with that said, guys, be sure to hit the like button on your way out the door. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.